Welcome all. This is SVC's Spotlight on Various Careers. We'll be going throughout the week, we'll be going through sort of our partner organisations. They'll be sort of giving presentations on their career route and their involvement with volunteering. Today's event, we've got AmandaCoffey. I've taken this from, I think, the UE page. I hope you don't mind, Amanda, who's the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of University of West England. So I'll just let her carry on, and thank you very much, Amanda. I'll stop sharing my screen so we can see your face, if that's okay.
Fine. Okay, hi everyone. So as Jonathan said, I'm AmandaCoffey. I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Provost of the University of West of England in Bristol. And I'll just start off by saying a little bit about myself before talking to you about my volunteering journey that I've been on, and perhaps giving you some top tips and some advice about what I've got out of volunteering that I hope will be helpful and useful to you. So I started as Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Provost at the University of West England, Bristol in April of this year. As I say to many people, I wouldn't advise anyone to starting a new job in the middle of a pandemic, but we are where we are. Prior to joining UE, I was actually at Cardiff University for 30 years, joined Cardiff University in my very early 20s as a junior lecturer. And over the last 30 years, I've worked my way up through Cardiff University, having a number of roles, including head of a large school of social sciences, a dean and a pro-vice-chancellor. Before starting as an academic, I trained as a secondary school teacher. And some of what I'm going to talk to you about here is about that journey that I took from secondary school teacher and then into academia as well. So I trained as a secondary school teacher and taught for a couple of years actually in inner city schools in Birmingham before rejoining the university to undertake a master's and then get my job at Cardiff University. But I'm not going to talk to you very much about my career today, but what I do want to do is to talk a little bit about my volunteering career. So I guess my second career, which has stood me in very good stead throughout the whole of my, my journey, I guess, to where I am now. I started volunteering when I was 14 years old, and I'm now in my mid-50s and I continue to be a volunteer. Although, of course, over the course of that journey, I've done a lot of different kinds of volunteering. And I guess it's really important just to start with that, to say that volunteering can mean lots of different things to lots of different people at different points in your life and in different circumstances. So when I was 14, I became a regular visitor at a residential setting quite near to where I lived. There was a residential setting for children and young people with learning difficulties. And simply by chance, having gone to visit that setting with my school, I then continued to drop in and to join in activities, supporting children and young people to get the most out of their leisure time, really. So to accompanying them on trips, spending time with them, talking to them. I did a lot of dancing with them and really just being there as a spare pair of hands, but also someone who was interested in listening to their stories and helping them to make the most of their experiences. When I was 19 and at university, I volunteered for Student Nightline, so student confidential counselling service, helping my fellow students, many of whom were perhaps undertaking mental health problems or just wanted someone to talk to. At 21 and as a recent graduate, I volunteered for a summer on a play scheme, actually supporting children from Tower Hamlets in London to access countryside activities. So a summer play scheme for socially disadvantaged children, bringing them out of London into the countryside for a week of activities, sailing, abseiling, craft activities, trips and so on. At 22, I was a befriender for a young person with autism who lived very close to where I lived. And I went and met with that young person twice a week, took them out on trips, went swimming with them, went to the pub with them, just really being there, giving their parents some respite, but also providing an opportunity to get to know another young person. In my 30s, I became a volunteer in a youth club, again, completely by accident. A friend of a friend asked if I'd go along and run a craft session. I do various craft activities. And on the back of that, I then went back there regularly, volunteered in the youth club, again supporting young people to have a good time, to be engaged and to provide a listening ear. I changed track actually in my 40s when I became a school governor, and I chaired a primary school parent teacher association, and I also became a trustee of a national charity. Again, still volunteering, all of those are volunteering activities, but moving slightly away from individual volunteering, more towards volunteering for organisations. And I now find myself in my 50s on the governing body of a learning federation of 3 schools where I chair the resources committee. Now, I could talk about other volunteering activities that I've done, but really I just wanted to start off by saying that actually volunteering can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. It draws on lots of different skill sets, and my volunteering journey really tracks, I guess, where I've been in my own career and what I feel I can offer as a volunteer. So from just listening and being and supporting to organising and engaging, right the way through to using my skill sets to support schools and other organisations. You'll see that there's a thread, there's a theme running through all of my volunteering, and that theme or that thread is really about supporting children and young people. And that, of course, spans from my initial interest in teaching and more latterly over my 30 years supporting young people to access higher education. So throughout the whole of my career journey, my volunteering career journey, at the heart of it has been children and young people. But depending on my time that I have available, the circumstances that present themselves, I've done lots of different kinds of volunteering. So what does all of my volunteering experiences show? Well, volunteering can be very small scale. It can simply be supporting one other person, giving of your time freely to provide some kind of support or to provide some kind of opportunity simply for one other person. So in a very small way, we're all volunteers in lots of our everyday and daily activities. It's the helping out, it's the being there without necessarily expecting payment or reward. Volunteering, however, as some of my career journey has shown, can also be really rather more formal than that. So school governing bodies, for example, are full of volunteers. Actually, they're run completely by volunteers. And indeed, school governing bodies are the largest volunteer workforce in the UK, with thousands of volunteers giving of their time freely to help ensure that schools are run with good governance. School governing bodies are responsible for standards in schools, they're responsible for appointing the head teacher, they're responsible for the performance management of the head teacher. They're a really important way of managing the school finances, but they're all run by volunteers who are accountable for ensuring that those schools are the best they can possibly be for the children that are within them. What my volunteering journey has also taught me is that volunteering can be, of course, about enhancing our own skills and experiences. Volunteering is altruistic, but it's also about reciprocity. Volunteering can be very good for your CV. It can be very good for developing your career aspirations and your ideas. It can actually be about opening doors for you and providing you with information on your own career journey. And I can see as a thread running through all of the volunteering that I've done, that sense of it being an altruistic and a reciprocal arrangement, providing opportunities for myself as well as supporting others. And I think that's really important to acknowledge, that volunteering is around a reciprocal arrangement. We get as much out of volunteering, I think, as we give. And that's a really important thing to remember. Volunteering, I think as well, from the experiences that I've had, is also about connection and community. Stands you in really good stead in all the careers that you go into. It's getting to know others, perhaps people who are different to yourself. It's about working with other people, perhaps diverse people that you wouldn't necessarily work with in other walks of life. And it's also about developing a sense of belonging. A really good example of that would be when I was the volunteer at the Parent Teacher Association. For any of you who remember what that is like, perhaps when you were a child at school or perhaps your own parents were involved, the Parent Teacher Association is actually about raising relatively small sums of money to help school support activities. So my volunteering was not the heady heights of a governing body. It was actually sticking raffle tickets on teddy bears and running jumble sales and having cake competitions and so on. But actually what I got out of that was actually a real sense of a community, of being part of a school, of being part of a community around connectivity and belonging, which was really important to me, as I'm sure it is to others. Volunteering can also be about using your skill set and your experience. So not just about gaining new skills or new experiences, but rather putting to good work, sweating your own assets, if you like, of the skills and the experiences that you have to help others. And of course, with that can come opportunities to influence and to develop others. And the work that I've done as chair of a school governing body, and more latterly on the governing body of the Learning Federation, is actually around influence, having the opportunity to influence policy, having the opportunity to mentor other professionals, and having the opportunity to draw on my own skill sets through my own knowledge of education to support professionals in a similar space as my own. Volunteering, of course, can also be about trying something new, sharing different experiences from our regular lives and developing new skills. And volunteering has given me fantastic opportunities to sail, to canoe, to kayak, to be involved in choirs, all with a view that actually I'm taking myself out of my comfort zone, but doing it in a supportive and a safe space and working with others. Of course, the other thing that volunteering has taught me and has shown me is that volunteering can be really personal and really local, really much about connectivity and community. But we also know that volunteering can also work on a larger and wider scale. I haven't personally done any volunteering that's global volunteering, and I'm sure some of you that are watching this will be interested in doing global volunteering or have already done so. But I can really appreciate that volunteering can work on a very local level, or it can work on a more macro level. And some of the work that I've done supporting governing bodies and supporting local authorities in relation to education, all on a voluntary basis, is about working not just on a local stage, but actually working on a much larger stage as well. Of course, volunteering can also be about kindness and about supporting others. Kindness is something that I'll come back to. We should really acknowledge that volunteering is around kindness, is about giving of ourselves freely, but it's also about helping ourselves. You will all know, I'm sure, that there's really good evidence that volunteering, the act of giving of your time free of charge, is beneficial not just to society and not just to individuals that we might be volunteering with and for, but it's also really important to those of us who volunteer. We know that volunteering provides benefits to our mental and our physical health, and the very social aspect of helping and working with others can have a really profound impact on our own psychological well-being. And I've certainly found through the volunteering work that I've done, it's kept my feet really firmly on the ground. It's given me the opportunity to develop alternative perspectives, to see things from others' points of view. It's helped develop my sense of humour, and it's certainly helped develop my resilience, which has all served me very well, if you like the day job in the work that I've done in my career, as well as I think helped me to really give back in my volunteering journey. It's probably worth saying at this point that I've also benefited personally from the volunteering of others. And it's really important, I think, to note that volunteering is an ecosystem and it's part of the circular economy. My children have attended summer holiday schemes that have been staffed entirely by volunteers, giving them fantastic experiences to grow and develop, and also giving us as parents important respite time. I have been supported personally in some very difficult times of my life by support groups and helplines ran completely by volunteers who listened to me, who supported me, who cajoled me, who befriended me, and who recognise that I wasn't alone in the personal difficulties that I was going through. My eldest son, now a rather large teenager, had a volunteer befriender supported by a national charity when he was younger. And that charity provided him with someone to listen to and to have fun with while we were going through challenges as a family. And my youngest son, now 15, and with significant additional needs, has been supported in all sorts of ways through volunteers, through volunteer respite workers, through volunteer summer holiday scheme workers. But also my youngest son has been taken out every week by a friend of ours who volunteers, gives it freely of his time. He's been taken out for an hour every week since he was 3. And that friend of mine provides a working week to us completely free of charge, 1 hour at a time, 1 week at a time. And that's absolutely, truly amazing. And that's just as amazing as all the other volunteering that you hear, the national volunteering, the organised volunteering. And I think that's just a really good reminder that volunteering can start really local and can start at home, but can actually have really profound impacts on all of us. My youngest son, who doesn't talk, has significant learning difficulties, has a completely independent relationship with our friend. I don't know what they get up to. They go to cafes, they go on walks, they have a way of communicating with each other. It's really valuable respite for us as a family, but actually it's providing my youngest son with incredible opportunities. And that's really what volunteering is about. At its heart, it's about kindness and it's about community, and all the kinds of volunteering that we do enables us to do that in different ways. So what have I learned from my volunteering experience that has stood me in good stead for my own career journey? So just some thoughts from me, really, some very personal thoughts. So make the most of opportunities when they arise. We can go out and seek volunteering opportunities. And there are all kinds of organisations, as we know, that enable us to connect with others to start our own volunteering journey. But sometimes volunteering opportunities just come along through chance encounters, through luck as well. And I've really learned to make the most of those opportunities when they feel right, when I feel I've got something to give, or when I feel I can contribute in some ways. Sometimes those opportunities have come in just when the time is right, when I feel I've got time to give, or when actually I feel that I can make the most of that opportunity. I've also learned that volunteering can take many different forms over the course of a lifetime. And as I indicated by suggesting some of the ways in which I have contributed to volunteering over the years, volunteering can be really small as well as really huge. It can take time or it can take very little time at all. So volunteering is something that can be fitted in and can take very different forms as we're on our own life course and are dealing with what life throws at us outside of our volunteering journey. So I guess what I'm saying is that volunteering can ebb and it can flow. Sometimes you can have the opportunity and the timing is right for you to do a significant piece of volunteering that really takes time and commitment. But actually at other times, volunteering can simply be in the act of giving an hour of your time, and not even necessarily regularly, but just giving an hour of your time free to help one other person perhaps. As I've already mentioned, it's also really important, I think, to acknowledge that volunteering is around give and take. Volunteering is really a good example of the circular economy. And I think we should acknowledge that we all can all benefit from volunteering, as well as being all able to give that volunteering time as well. And we can benefit in a couple of ways. As I've already indicated, I myself have benefited by the voluntary actions of others who have supported me and supported my family. But also the act of volunteering oneself can also bring personal gain. It supports your mental health, it keeps your feet on the ground, it gives you the opportunity to laugh with others, it gives you the opportunity to act with kindness, and that in itself is hugely beneficial to our own mental health and well-being. So that's just really an acknowledgement that volunteering is important, because I think we gain as much of, if not more, than we could possibly give. The other things that I've learned that I think we sometimes don't acknowledge is that volunteering can have multiple motivations. It's very easy, I think, and sometimes a little trite to think about just the altruistic motivations, that we just want to help, or we just want to support, or we just want to give of our time freely. That's incredibly important, but I think we should also acknowledge that volunteering can also help in other ways on our regular career journeys as well. So you'll have seen my golden thread running through my career journey, and certainly the career opportunities that I took, the volunteering opportunities that I took very early on in my life, in my young adulthood, were actually about making sure that I got the right kind of experiences that would enable me to apply to do teacher training. They were giving me the right kind of experiences which could show that I could listen and could work with young people. They were testing out my own resilience, I guess, in terms of working with young people as well. And also more latterly, the work that I've done in school governance has also been about making sure that I can connect some of the work that I do in my academic research with how that might be applied on the ground in a real life scenario of school governance. So I think we should acknowledge that we can be motivated to volunteer for different reasons, and that doesn't take away from the act of volunteering and the good things that flow with it. And sometimes being able to show that we've been thoughtful about our volunteering opportunities and the choices we've made can also be really important. So volunteering, therefore, is about kindness, but it's not all about others. It's also about our own well-being and sometimes about our own career trajectories as well. And I think it's really important to acknowledge and accept that. Again, it doesn't detract from the act of volunteering, but it also provides us with a realistic appraisal of why some of us go into volunteering as well. The other things that I've learned from my volunteering experiences and from all the other wonderful volunteers that I've met along the journey is that everyone and anyone can be a volunteer. It's really about finding your niche, and it's really about finding a space where you feel safe to undertake that volunteering work. So no one should be dissuaded from volunteering, and the Volunteering Act can be very simple and very straightforward, as well as complex. So volunteering has given me the opportunity to give back and to share my skills and experiences in different settings. It's drawn on my strengths, but also volunteering has also taken me out of my comfort zone, and that has helped me to build my resilience, that has helped to push myself further, and that has helped me to, I guess, be appraised of my own strengths, but also some of my weaknesses or some of my areas for development. My own volunteering journey has also shown me that volunteering doesn't have to be a big, grand gesture. It can be low-key, small scale, manageable, and doable. So volunteering has taught me patience. It's taught me to think creatively. It's taught me to take the initiative. It's taught me definitely to work in teams and to work with diverse groups of people. Volunteering has also taught me to be humble. I rarely shout about my volunteering experiences. I just get on and do them. And I guess volunteering has also taught me to get things done, that actually working together, working with others around a common mission, around a common goal, where you're bringing different sets of experiences and different skill sets to bear, can enable us to get things done. And that stands us in really good stead in whatever career aspirations we have and whatever we go into. So lastly, I guess some reflections from me. I like to think of volunteering as part of what we all do, and that it's ordinary rather than it being extraordinary. What do I mean by that? Volunteering isn't special necessarily. It should just be part of our everyday practice. So I'm going to leave you just with a couple of quotes that I've stolen from others, but I just really think sums up something of my own volunteering journey and how it stood me in very good stead, and from three very different individuals. So firstly, from the actress Audrey Hepburn, she said, as you grow older, you discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself and the other for helping others. Winston Churchill, another leader of a different kind, said, we make a living by what we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And that's also recognizing the ebb and flow of giving as part of that volunteer journey. And finally, Maya Angelou, who some of you may have heard of, a very famous American author and human rights activist. She said, I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to be able to throw back something. You need to be able to throw something back. And that's recognizing again that volunteering is part of a circular economy and part of ebb and flow. So I hope what I've been able to do in this very short time with you is to, I guess, debunk some of the myths that volunteering needs to be extraordinary, that it can be ordinary. Debunk some of the myths that people don't have time to volunteer. We all have time to volunteer. And also shows you how you can have a volunteer career, I guess, a volunteering career that can set alongside, support, help, and encourage the other careers and journeys that we're embarking on. And that feels to me to be particularly fitting, given that the focus of the whole of this week is on career spotlights and is on the connectivity between volunteering and the kinds of career choices and kind of experiences that we have. So thank you very much for taking the opportunity to join me or to listen back if you're looking at the recording. And I hope that I provided you with some food for thought and some personal reflections on what volunteering means to me and what I've got out of my own volunteering journey. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for sharing with us. Quick couple of questions. Has there been any sort of standout activity that that's been your favourite that you volunteered with, may I ask?
Gosh, that's a really difficult question. The thing, I guess two things really. The volunteering work that I did with children from Tower Hamlets in London, which you have to remember is over 30 years ago now, when the society was a very different space and place. But the joy that those young people had in being able to take part in
amazing
amazing activities and to be listened to and to be connected with each other has always stayed with me. And I still remember those young people's faces and their names. And it was a real privilege actually to share that time with them. So that's a kind of standout one, I guess. I guess the other standout one was, I guess, something a little bit more prosaic, which is that I chaired the Education Development Board for Cardiff, again in a voluntary role, and I steered through the strategy for Cardiff's 2030 education strategy. So I led that piece of work again in a voluntary capacity, and I was incredibly proud, obviously pre-COVID, when I went to the launch of that strategy and saw the ways in which that strategy was going to be brought to life in the schools and in the education sector across Cardiff. And that was a very proud moment for someone who's a rather humble volunteer.
That's amazing. That's going to have a major impact on the future generation. I know from the Duke of Edinburgh, they any sort of voluntary organisation, they will sort of aiming towards that sort of legislation and then sort of changing their sort of structure to sort of target and sort of the benefit. Have you ever met a beneficiary further on? You over your career, you volunteered with many sort of beneficiaries. Have you ever sort of been in contact a couple of years after and been in any sort of conversation with them?
Yes, so I stayed in contact actually with one of the young people that I met over 30 years ago from London, and have continued to mentor and support them on their own journey. And actually the young person that I befriended in my early 20s, when I befriended a young person with autism, I've stayed in contact with them and with their family throughout their lives.
That's brilliant. That's very emotional, I can imagine, very proud moment.
Yeah.
Finally, at the last one, another difficult one. So could you give us an example of some of the skills that you've developed through volunteering?
Okay, so learning to work with others is a really important skill. And often in our careers that we have, or when we're working in our day jobs, we often tend to be with people that are quite like ourselves. That's the kind of nature of work quite often, that we're often with people who often share our values or share our skill sets or are quite like us. Whereas actually what volunteering does is it brings you into contact with lots of different people, people who are different ages to you, people who come from different backgrounds to you, people who have different skill sets, different motivations, different perspectives, different political views. And actually being able to work with others constructively. I think volunteering has helped me to be a better listener. I think it's helped me to work better in teams. And actually, as I've moved through my career into increasingly leadership roles, being able to work with people from diverse backgrounds and being able to bring them together around a common purpose has been incredibly important. I think the other skills that volunteering has helped me with is patience, being patient, recognizing that sometimes things take time. So I think that's a really important skill to have. I think the other important skill that I've learned in some of my work to do is actually how to, as I say, how to get things done. And you often don't think about that as a skill, but there's something about having a common purpose, being able to all pull in the same direction. And I think that has really stood me in good stead for my career. And I think my career has undoubtedly been enhanced by the opportunities that I've had to develop and to practice those skills. Because I guess the other thing about volunteering is that it's not just about developing skills or having experiences, it's actually about practice. And by that, I mean doing stuff. You know, that's what volunteering is really about. It's about, in whatever form of volunteering you do, it is about kind of rolling your sleeves up and getting on with something, whether that's around supporting someone through the Duke of Edinburgh's, you know, working with the you know, the scouting movement, but it's also just as applicable to being on a governing body. It's about how do we get things done? And then actually it's about putting skills into practice. And that's a really important thing that volunteering can help you do.
Thank you, Amanda. That's a great response. That's my questions for today. And thank you for sharing your talk with us. I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone who views the video will as well. Okay. Thank you again, and I'll upload this to Flipgrid and send you the link if you'd like to share it with anyone.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope that what I've said has been useful.
Definitely. Bye. Thank you, Amanda. Ta-ra.
Bye.